Africa we bituuse yetaaga bakulembeze abato nga baagala ensi yaabwe nga baagala olukalala lw'omwana w'omuddugavu era nga baagala Africa okugira bange ekulaakulana. Abakulembeze bano balina ebirowoozo n'endowooza ey'ekyasa ekya21. So si baali abakulembeze abakadde aba middle stone age abatamanyi biki Africa byetaaga nga bo baagala kutambulira mu nkwawa za muzungu. Bino biri wano mu ggwanga lya America mu kibuga Washington DC. Abakulembeze oba abakadde okuva mu mawanga ga Africa ag'enjawulo bwe beegasse ku Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi Wine mu kusindika struggle eno y'okuggyako gavumenti ya Mwami Museveni nga bagamba Mwami Museveni alina okuggibwako nga n'amawanga ga Africa gonna gali wamu nga abantu bonna mu mawanga ago nga bonna bagamba kimu nti nno tukooye bannakyemalira tukooye abakulembeze abeeremeza mu buyinza tikubanga Museveni kyakulabirako kibi kyakulabirako kya buswavu eri amawanga amalala ga Africa nti buli Museveni lwayongera okulwa mu ntebe n'amawanga Africa abakulembeze abali abalala bamukoppako ne bagamba nga Museveni akyalimu ne bongera okukuza obwannakyemalira mu Africa ate nga Africa tekyetaaga bannakyemalira wabula yeetaaga abakulembeze abato ab'endowooza ento ate abaagala ensi yaabwe era bagenda okugoba omuzungu wano bakulaakulanye Africa nga n'olwekyo bakulembeze abo mwe muli Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi Wine agenda okubikola era agenda okuwa Africa essuubi eppya. Abano bavudde mu mawanga ag'enjawulo abakulembeze era abakadde abaaliko abakulembeze mu mawanga ga Africa era abawi b'amagezi b'abakulembeze mu mawanga ga Africa ag'enjawulo abasisinkanye Kyagulanyi mu lukuŋŋaana olwa NUP Diaspora Conference 2023 ne bamutegeeza nti bali naye era bagenda kutambula naye Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi Wine okulaba nga gavumenti ya Mwami Museveni egw'ennume y'ekigo ali Kyagulanyi alayire. Bagamba bakooye okulaba omuntu ng'afuga Africa ng'afuga Uganda emyaka 40 gyonna ng'akulembera banne nga wataliyo bantu balala bazaalibwa bazaalibwa nti oyo aba yeeyagaliza yekka aba wa mutima mubi aba munnanfuusi aba muduuyi n'olwekyo nga Africa balina okwegatta bajjewo ekizibu ekyo ate abaana ba Africa beeyagale. Kale kusaba otwegatteko n'obumbefu bw'ekika ekya waggulu tugende mu ggwanga la America wano Washington DC mu lukuŋŋaana National Platform 2023 United 2023 US na NUP Convention ate tulabe ebigambo bino nga bituwa abakadde bano abeegasse ku Kyagulanyi abakulu okuva mu mawanga ga Africa ag'enjawulo.
First of all, I want all of you to know that August 8th will go down as one of the most important days in the history of the liberation struggle of Uganda. August 8th is the day when the World Bank announced suspension of any new money in the sector. So the people who are asking you questions, why are you going all the way from Boston, for example, you, to protest in Washington, D.C.? That's right. In front of the World Bank? That's right. If they ask you that question again, give them the answer. All of you. That is the power of protest. The gentleman who is joining us today, Professor Ron Daniels, let me see his official bio here in the program. Dr. Ron Daniels is a renowned scholar, Pan-African, and the president and founder of the Institute for the Black World 21st Century, IBW 21. He's also the convener of the Pan-African Unity Dialogue, PAUD, which brings together independent African, American, South American, African, and Caribbean immigrant organizations to strategize solutions for the challenges facing African peoples worldwide. Within the Pan-African Unity Dialogue, which hosts a quarterly meeting, of which Black Star News and myself are a member, we have what is called the Crisis in Africa Committee. And then within that, we have a task force called Stop Museveni. That is how seriously Professor Daniels takes this campaign to contribute toward the liberation of Uganda. And why did we select Museveni? Yes. Because Museveni has caused destabilization, not only Uganda, the entire region. And we thought that by helping to resolve the situation in Uganda, it would benefit the entire region in Africa. And Professor Daniels is not engaged with Africa in a theoretical or academic sense. He is engaged in a practical sense. He has participated in protests in front of the Ugandan mission to the UN in New York City. Give him a round of applause. He does not preach struggle. He engages in struggle, the practice of struggle. That is why I want you to know the caliber of this comrade who is joining us in today's meeting. Now, I want him to come here and share some of the wisdom he's learned by engaging in struggle for a long time. Professor Daniels was engaging in struggle on an Pan-African basis when the continent was still fighting for Uhuru, when we were still resisting colonialism. So he used to go and protest in front of the South African embassy, for example, during apartheid. And the other European countries like Portugal that were still colonizing in Africa. Now the irony is that in the 21st century, he is engaged in protest in front of the embassies of an African country. A reactionary leader like Museveni, who preaches and practices neo-colonialism. So he will share the wisdom he's learned from having engaged in struggle for a long time against European colonialism and now African neo-colonialism sponsored by the United States. And yesterday he got to see a bit of the documentary, The People's President. And from that documentary, which inspired him, he has more ideas of how sisters and brothers in this country can take this struggle to the next level. And he's going to share some of those ideas when it comes out to the podium. Unfortunately, he's also going to be chairing today's quarterly meeting of the Pan-African Unity Dialogue. So that is why he will not be able to stay long on the podium. He literally has to speak and run. I don't think he'll have time to take any questions. I will be happy to take questions on his behalf. If he can take 1 or 2 questions, that's fine. But the most important thing is for him to be on time to start the next meeting of the Pan-African Unity Dialogue. I think I've covered the most essential points. Give him a round of applause. Professor Bakulembeze.
Well, thank you very much. I was listening last night to People Power. I'm reminded that the Black Panther Party used to say what? Power to the people. So, there appears to be some synergy there. I am in a real bind because when we talked to our esteemed representative, Dr. Kanumba, we advised him that I did have to leave. I will be with you all day today, but I do have to go and moderate the meeting of the Pan-African Unity Dialogue. And the idea was, well, the program will start at 9 o'clock, and I know we have something called, in Black America, we call it CP time, called People's Time, but it seems like it's also African People's Time, and it's something we need to cure. My beloved sister, got to see her, one of our elders. She was in the room first. She and I came into the room at the same time. And she came, she said, oh, I'm on time. I'm looking for her because I liked her. She was just walking around here anyway. So anyway, she's one of our elders. She understood the importance of starting on time. So it's one of the things I want to share. I also quickly just want to, because among other things, we have to force this relationship between Africans in America, African Americans, your kinfolk, and the diaspora, the Ugandan diaspora, and the diaspora in general. And in that regard, we need to understand each other's history and symbols. So, when we played the U.S. national anthem, you said, I put my head down. Because I do not salute the U.S. national anthem. We don't respect the U.S. national anthem because we still see it as a symbol of oppression. So in meetings between us, we play the Black national anthem. There's a song called the Black national anthem. We will play the Black national anthem. And since we respect the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the greatest mass organizer that Black people have ever seen anywhere, we would never have a meeting in which we do not have the red, black, and the green alongside these other flags. Even if you have the American flag, where is the red, the black, and the green? The universal African flag of all of our people. So now, what I'm going to do, because I really don't have time to do what I need to do, I've told Brother Milton out about it. Let me just amplify a little bit about what we talk about. Because we have to give this brother a tremendous round of applause because he is a part of the Pan-African dialogue. He carries out passports. But when he came, he chose a passport for crisis points all over Africa. We made a strategic decision that we were going to focus on Uganda because Museveni is the destabilizer in chief. And so we went, when Museveni came to the United Nations, we went to the United Nations. There was only a handful of us, maybe 15 of us. And we protested. We said, stop Museveni. And then we recorded it. Even before the Ugandan diaspora was really that well galvanized, we took that step. This brother led the way. And then we took the next year, we did it again. Then ultimately we took a group of people to the south, to the Ugandan embassy to protest. Why? Because we know that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And we use that to help us. And we have supported every meeting of the Pan-African Unity Dialogue. You know what's on the agenda? The Stop Museveni campaign is on every agenda of the Pan-African Unity Dialogue. Now the first thing I want to say to you, because we are going through together on this. When I spoke to our president yesterday, and the person, he's not here, but we appreciated the fact that he came to the state of the Blackwell Conference, which we just held. A global conference that we just held.
Yo TV channels app, Kateli big and better.
All of these are the people that inspired us as young Pan-Africanists. And we are terribly disappointed with what we see in terms of what Africa has become. All of these self-aggrandized, corrupt leaders. We did not fight the struggle in this country supporting the liberation movements in Africa to produce Musevenis. That's not what it was about. So Africa and the world needs what we see in the struggle that the National Unity Platform represents. You have the potential to make history and to advance history, because what Africa needs is a model. You know, all over the continent we see the same thing. There are very rare glimmers of light. Young people like Bobby Wine are rising up all over because they are tired. There was a woman named Fannie Lou Hamer. When you learn our history, she said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. People are sick and tired of these bankrupt, corrupt leaders overseeing the richest continent on the face of the earth. Africa is the richest continent on the face of the earth. And it ought to be, as Garvey said, the basis for global black power. He said Africa, Europe for the Europeans, Asia for the Asians, Europe for the Africa for the Africans at home and abroad. not in a negative sense. So the point I want to, if I don't leave any other thought, it is this thought. You are the promise. What we see in Uganda is the promise. So I've told Milton, with the Pan-African Unity Dialogue, we will focus on a whole lot of things, but we will be focusing on how we support the National Unity Platform, because you are the future for the African world. That's what you represent. That's what you represent. And so as you represent this, there are certain key things that you'll need to begin to develop based on some of the experiences that we hope to share with you. And what I am planning to do, because I won't be able to do all that I said I'm going to do, I told Milton I'm going to record a special message to the National Unity Platform so I can more fully sort of share my ideas and some of my thoughts. But what I'm going to close with is some of the plans that we have, some of the ideas, my brother, that we want to move on moving forward. Because the question for today's panel was how to impact U.S. policy. And we can do that. But one of the most critical ways to do that is to have a firm and strong relationship with the Congressional Black Caucus in this country, as well as civil rights, human rights leaders. Because one of the things that we also need to understand and learn in terms of as we work together is the bridge that you came across. All people of African descent ought to be aware that the bridge you stand on today is because of people that you need to understand in terms of the history. Whether it's El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz, or whether it's Fannie Lou Hamer, whether it's Harriet Tubman, you need to know that. They fought the battle to make it possible for you to be here. We have to have that understanding so that we can work together. But I am going to invite, I play a leading role with the Congressional Black Caucus. And we're going to have a major session on reparations. I am going to invite our president to be a special guest for the Congressional Black Caucus. And I will personally introduce him to key members of the Congressional Black Caucus. And while we are there, the documentary that we saw last night, that powerful documentary, we are going to, with his permission and with your permission, we are going to have a special screening of that in Washington, D.C., because we have the Pacifica Broadcasting Network. We're going to ask them to co-sponsor it, and we're going to show that documentary. And then we hope to be able to take that documentary city by city by city, because we are determined that the United States of America is going to respect the aspirations of the people of Uganda. They are going to respect the aspirations of African people, and they are going to stop investing in murder and crime and victimization. We are going to help get that done. And finally, one of the things that we hope to do, we hope to organize, and Mel Foote will be here later, but we're talking about organizing a delegation of African American leaders, civil rights leaders, human rights leaders, faith leaders, labor leaders, a delegation of leaders. We intend to come visit you in Uganda in the very near future. So I will be here with you the rest of the day, and we hope to, at some point, meet with the president, because we have a copy of the Baltimore Declaration that has a beautiful picture of him. He delivered a historic address at the State of the Black World Conference. So we hope to caucus with him. I'll be here to meet and greet and to answer questions and so forth. I do now have to rush to convene this meeting. But I close with this thought, the battle cry of people who have gone before us, those like Maurice Bishop. If you don't know Maurice Bishop, you should know him. He is the late, great leader of the People's Revolutionary Government of Grenada that helped to rise up against oppression, but he was a global leader. Because the other thing is, we are Pan-Africanists. We are Pan-Africanists. We believe in the unification of all African people everywhere under a progressive agenda. But also the battle cry of the 60s and the 70s, which was still very, very relevant today. We close always with a luta continua, a luta continua, a luta continua. Long live the United Africa, the United Platform. Long live Bobi Wine. Long live the Uganda Revolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ron Daniels, for that powerful presentation. And we look forward to working with you and the Congressional Black Caucus in the struggle to liberate Uganda. Professor Alimadi, were you finished with your remarks? I'd like to give you an opportunity to also finalize your remarks. Then we shall go on to invite our Secretariat to officially open this event.
Sisters and brothers, another round of applause for Dr. Daniels, even as he walks away. You know? One thing I know about Dr. Daniels, when he makes a promise, he delivers. When he called for protest in front of the Uganda mission, he said, Milton, I'm going to be there at 12 noon. I went there, he was there at 12 noon. In fact, he got there before me, I'm ashamed to say. But I wasn't too late, maybe just 3-4 minutes late. And he's right. The initial protest, maybe there were 4 of us. Next time, there were 15 of us. But the most important thing he has decided to do is to commit his energy to help us remove Museveni. And he's doing it because, as you could sense from his presentation, he has a deep love for our African people. And yesterday, I sat next to him as you watched the documentary. And he pulled out his notebooks and he started scribbling. And I was trying to explain some things that were happening in the documentary that maybe I thought he didn't understand because, you know, Ugandan context. But he had no time for that. He kept saying, shh, shh, shh. That's when I said, he's now fully committed and we're going all the way. And then he started sharing the notes with me. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. He said sometimes we're involved in too many battles because there's a lot of things going on in Uganda. I mean, in Africa, on the continent. I think it's better sometimes to focus on one main battle. And right now, as we are watching this documentary, I've decided that the focus is going to be Uganda and Museveni. So everything is online nowadays, so please Google Dr. Ron Daniels, you know, Professor Ron Daniels, the last name D-A-N-I-E-L-S, and his organization, Institute of the Black World 21st Century, or IBW 21, and also Google the Pan-African Unity Dialogue, because I want you to send him a personal message of thanks, even after you leave here this weekend. Send him an email and thank him. And also ask him what you can do to help him help us. This is a great opportunity. He delivers on promises, so let's join him in joining us. A luta continua, as he said. People power, our power. Thank you, sisters and brothers.
Good morning, comrades. People power. Our power. My name is Winifred Muyingo Mutiaba from the great state of Minnesota. I am the former chapter leader of Minnesota. So I was one of the first people to show that you can actually give up power without a fight. So at this moment, I would like to introduce Honorable Jolly Mugisha to come here and then introduce everybody from the Secretariat. Thank you. And before she comes on stage, we do have a youth session going on in Madison room. So if you have any young ones, I don't see any in the room, but just in case, there's a youth session going on, and we'd like to have all the youth go in there and participate. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, Madam Jolly Mugisha.
I'm glad to be here this morning. The organizers of this convention, the leaders of various chapters across the diaspora, my colleagues from the Secretariat, members of Parliament here present, ladies and gentlemen. I want to take this opportunity this morning to welcome you for the second day. We were here yesterday, and the numbers kept on dwindling as until the time of the documentary. So I thank all of you for being here this morning. It shows the kind of commitment and love for the struggle that you people have. Welcome this morning. Our President, His Excellency Kyagulanyi, will be in sometime later, but I want to bring his greetings this morning. He's always with you, and I thank God for the love that you show him. You people in the diaspora, we respect you. Each time we see you, we feel inspired. Thank you so much. I'm going to make a few remarks, and then I will open the convention. Now, us back home in Kampala and across the country, Uganda, we have a number of challenges, but then each time we see your participation, we are re-energized so much. I represent the western part of Uganda. As you all know, Mr. Museveni comes from there. You know, each morning we get up, we thank God that we are able to get up, because the level of intimidation, the level of fear, it's just too much. You saw it from the documentary last evening, but I want to re-echo what my president said, that so much was left out of the documentary, but we continue to suffer that. But I thank God, I thank your energy that gives us, you know, hope for another day, that we get up and still push on and on and on. Thank you very much for giving us that energy. Back at the Secretariat, we face indeed a lot of challenges, as you may know, but you are always there for us. And in this case, I want to thank you so much, you people who have been able to touch the lives of the important persons in our struggle. Recently, the late William Byarugaba was in Boston here for treatment. I want to thank all of you who touched his life in terms of food, in terms of upkeep, then having to transport his body back home for burial. You really gave him a decent reason to continue living, but of course we cannot decide what God has decided. Thank you so much. We buried him on your behalf, but you did well. Thank you. In the like manner, For the late Council Wameri, you did wonderful. And I want to inform you that from the time of Council Wameri, many people saw from what you did and they are joining the struggle. Because we are not only struggling for the liberation of the nation, but we are struggling for the liberation of different individuals. The kind of family you offer, the family support, thank you so much. Ashraf Kasirye and many others who are here, we thank you for the kind of support you are giving them. Of course, back home, many others are joining us because like they say in the Bible, the blood of the saints does not go in vain. So when they see you, when other people see you, in fact, recently when we went for late Byarugaba funeral in Kabari, I want to assure you that we garnered a lot of support. Even when the church denied us entry, you know, they were there creating scenes of collecting money here and there, but many other people said, I think this is the right group to join. So we are gaining membership out of your support, and I want to assure you that probably in the many more days to come, we are going to have many new members. Thank you. There are a number of programs we are undertaking at the Secretariat, which I think you would like to know because you give support in terms of finances and others. We have one program called the Kunga Support, which is meant for membership drive. We move around the country. Of course, it is brutal. It is very hostile. I remember, I know some of you who follow social media, you saw one time when Chairman Nyanzi was brutalized in Chenjojo, one of the districts in Western Uganda, and we don't fear. We continue, but that is one area where we are working on, because as a political party, we must continue to show visibility. Talking alone without action doesn't build a party. So we continue to move. We have moved into building structures right from grassroots, and this is an activity that requires us to move right from LC1 up to the highest level in the district. Now, yesterday, when people were making presentations here, I saw brains. I was whispering to the Secretary General, to the spokesperson, that why don't some of these people come back home so that we can have people to take up those leadership positions. Like in Western Uganda last time, during the time of elections, I moved around as looking for candidates. And you know, a political party that doesn't have leadership, of course, is no party at all. So I saw the brains here. People, please, those who can come, my target this coming elections is to have at least a minimum of 10 male members of parliament and at least 5 women from Western Uganda. And my colleague from Northern Uganda is looking forward to having many. Well, this time we have a great number, of MPs, but they are from the center. And one of the challenges we have been facing is that people tell us, oh, you see, that issue is for the people of Buganda in the center. But we want to beat that one because we don't want to keep on falling prey of Mr. Museveni's tricks. You know, one of the major tricks he uses is divide and rule. Dividing us along tribal, dividing us along religious lines, and now regions. So people, I see somebody from Western Uganda, please come. Or if you know anyone out there whom you think we can support and then they come up in a position of leadership, please do so. We need you here, but we also need you back home. Now, I wanted to talk briefly also about, one of the things I have noticed that I think Mr. Museveni has successfully used and is now actually going to haunt us even more, the issue of tribalism. I think Mr. Museveni is generally a bad person, right? I think he's the worst person I've ever come across. I don't know about you, but the guy is bad. He's actually a devil. Devilish, I must say. Because if you go, I used to visit work for him. But if you visit Mr. Museveni and you allow him to, to meet you, and he looks you straight in the face, the next moment you'll have your hand up. I don't know what happens. I don't know what evil powers he uses, but that's him, right? So now, I am saying, don't let his devilish ways, undermine our strategies, undermine our cohesion and our cooperation. Mr. Museveni does what he does as an individual, but not on behalf of the tribe, okay? Using tribes, he's now, making us work against one another. I know even in our midst here, there must be some people of Rwandese descent, right? Yes, they are there. Now, for someone to stand here and say that Museveni, Abanyarwanda, those things, I think is quite unfortunate. Let's attack, like he normally says, let us remove the jigger. He's the jigger, not the tribe. Mr. Museveni is the jigger, and let us get rid of the jigger, but not cut off the whole foot. Ladies and gentlemen, I want us to learn that one from now onwards, and we stop, attacking other innocent people who may really be our great supporters. Thank you. Finally, I don't have to say much. We have a number of members of parliament from here. Can I request you to stand up, please, Doctor and your team, the MPs? These are the MPs. I hope they will have time. Okay. Those are the MPs who were able to come. I know the invitation was open, but thank you so much for joining us. Council Katana, he presented here a paper yesterday, and he's our treasurer. Welcome, Council Katana. We have the mayor of Nakawa. Where are you? The mayor of Nakawa. Oh, welcome, madam. The spokesperson, of course, you have been seeing Honorable Joel Senyonyi, and your deputy, General Waswa. I'm installing him. General Waswa, they are out there. They are out there, and these guys are doing a great, great, great job. Sometimes I fear when I see him and Honorable Joel making presentations on our local TVs for as late as 1 a.m., and I wonder how they even go back home. Thank you so much. The rest of the members, I think you have been interacting with them. Otherwise, I want to end by thanking you for supporting our travel. I know some of us just came just by your support. Thank you for feeding us. Thank you for accommodating us. Thank you for our upkeep. Thank you so much, and may God add on from where you have deducted. Then finally, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take this opportunity. Oh, thank you, Professor. Thank you. Thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for the doctor who has given us great, great inspiration. I want to believe that when we go back from here, we shall emulate what he has told us. Thank you, the organizers. Thank you for the great brains. Thank you for having my president. Thank you for the struggle. Like the Rumumbists used to say, the struggle continues, right? And with these few words, the protocol observed, I'd like to take this opportunity to declare this convention officially open. Thank you so much. People power. People power. Add some vibe. People power.
Our power.
People power.
Our power.
NUP.
Everywhere.
Chagulanyi. My president, and that's what he is for the rest of Uganda. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Ms. Jordan Fisher, our Vice President, Western Region, National Unity Platform, representing the Secretariat today. Thank you. Our next speaker is a friend of Uganda, Mr. Eric Chinje. He's the CEO of Africa Media Initiative, and he has been a driving force behind media development initiatives. His extensive experience includes senior advisory roles at KRL International. He will talk about that. He ran as strategic communications at the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, providing him with unique perspective for our discussions. Mr. Chinje spent over 16 years at the World Bank in Washington, D.C., where he served as the bank's spokesperson on African affairs and held managerial positions, including director of the World Bank Institute Global Media Development Program. He also led the Africa Region Strategic Communications, supervising a team of over 80 communications professionals in sub-Saharan Africa. Mr. Chinje notably served as Director of External Affairs and Communications at the Africa Development Bank from 2004 to 2008. He has been a correspondent for renowned media outlets such as CNN World Report, BBC World Service, Voice of America, among others. His accomplishments have earned him many prestigious honors, and his expertise will undoubtedly enrich our conference discussions. Allow me to welcome Mr. Eric Chinje.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not sure why, of all Africans, 1 billion of us, I got called up to speak to you today. Not exactly sure why. I think it's because I come from a country that is very similar to Uganda. The president of Cameroon, Mr. Paul Biya, has been president for 41, almost 42 years. And I have known him and worked with him prior to leaving Cameroon. And I have watched, I've been out of the country for over 30 years now, and I've watched Cameroon from a distance. I go there all the time. I was in Cameroon last week. In my work, and I'm trying to tell you why I'm here. In my work, I've had to interact with a lot of African leaders, going back to Mobutu Sese Seko, whom I worked with, and he came to trust, if you would believe it, all the way to Sylvie Johnson, and I mention her because she's a woman, the first elected female president in Africa, and a host of them. The last one I worked with was Eric, my namesake, of Botswana, President Sisi. The reason I say this is to, I hope, convince you that I'm qualified to speak. You never know. But you know, I have also taken the time to reflect on the African condition. Why are we not succeeding? Why is this continent of 1 billion+ people, with all the natural resources that it has, Why is it not working? There's got to be a problem. It can't, I've tried to blame God, but that's not good enough. I think if it's God's fault, he must have a reason, and the challenge for us is to find that reason and maybe pray for it to change, because I hear that God hears prayers. So something is not happening. Something is not right. I've sat in this room and heard you all charged up by Dr. Daniels, or Professor Daniels, the one who spoke before me. I've heard that. And I could see the emotional charge in this room. And I've seen emotional charges across the continent. And nothing is changing. You've got to take a step back. You cannot do the same things over and over and expect a different results. You all know that. You've got to take a step back. Why is Mr. Biya in Cameroon there for 40 years? I'm here with my sister, Ufi, who's a vice chancellor in one of the universities in Cameroon. So she's high up in the system. I don't say this so you attack my sister. And we have these exchanges all the time. How does a guy survive in power for that long? And what will it take to change the dynamics of things in the country? I'm hoping that in the next few minutes I'll be able to convince you to take that step back, rethink a few things, and do what is necessary to move your country forward. And I know Uganda will not move forward, just as much as Cameroon will not move forward, as long as these people are there, the Musevenis and the Biyas of the world. I don't say that to, again, charge you emotionally. No. I say that because I want you guys to take that step back and think. I was looking at Uganda. And looking at this country that has such wealth, agricultural wealth. What is happening? How much of your agricultural produce are transformed in Rwanda, in Uganda? I was looking at the tourism industry. You have one of the most beautiful countries on the continent. What innovations have taken place in the last 30 years to ensure that Uganda becomes the touristic heaven and actually attracts people? Because it's when tourists come that a tourism industry has meaning. What have you done to attract them? What have you done in manufacturing and processing foods and other things? And there are all of these sectors. You're one of the countries they're talking about, and it's maybe the reason Museveni wants to stick around, because of the oil that has been discovered. Think about who is exploiting that oil and what they're doing about it. And if you go the way most African countries have gone, you will not have a petrochemical industry, which should be the natural next step from producing oil. No country, not even Nigeria, with all the oil it produces, not even Angola, has a petrochemical industry. Why are you guys not thinking ahead and preparing for that? Because if you do not, and this is maybe the most important point I want to make, if you do not create wealth in that country, if you do not create wealth and distribute wealth, you're not going to make a single difference in your country. So what you should all be focusing on is, how do we create wealth in Uganda? Bobi Wine should be talking about that over everything else. Even if it means, Museveni would steal those ideas. He'll steal them, but he'll do nothing with them because the endemic corruption will not allow him to do anything with those ideas. So think about it. How do we create wealth in Uganda? And you'll create wealth based on what you already have. That's the irony. Look, I started off by saying maybe we should ask God. If you ask God, he would laugh and tell you to go back and sit where you are. Because he would say, I've given you everything it takes to create the wealth you need to create. And if you don't do that, your country is not going to move forward. So look at each of your regions in the country. Look at all, whether you're in Western Uganda, in East, in the center, wherever. There are very specific things you have that you can work on to generate revenue and make life better for citizens. That's what this is all about. If you cannot make it better for the majority of citizens, your politics is, just nonsense. So I'm hoping that you all, my one message is the NUP should move away from the politics of politicians. Move away from that. Because in country after country after country, we hear that. I sat for coffee with President Masisi just when he was campaigning. He was not sure of winning because his predecessor was against him. Masisi of Botswana. We sat for coffee and there were two of us. He sat on the floor and I was like, wow, this guy, he's the president because he was campaigning while as president. Instead of sitting on the comfortable seats I was sitting in, he said, no, I want to relax. And he sat on the floor and I was looking, my God, this is a different guy. And when we spoke, what I'm telling you now was the kind of discussion I had with this man. And I was so confident that finally there's an African leader who will be different, who will, he's inheriting a fairly good economy, Botswana. And I thought he would just move it to the highest heights. And he turned out to be, from what I'm told, I've not been back because of the disappointment. Corruption, his family is wealthy, they are the ones who control the wealth of the country. And as I said, if you cannot think of how you create and distribute wealth, you'll just be like the rest of them. If Bobi Wine, if he doesn't think about that and build a program around that, he'll be like the rest of them. Doesn't matter how excited you all are about him. I have to clap for the guy who started the clapping. You know why? Because you understand what I'm saying. You understand where I'm trying to go with this. It's not about the emotionalisms of the moment. That's not what we need. As I said earlier, I am involved with a group of, there are under 10 of us, about 6, in Cameroon, rethinking that country. We are rethinking Cameroon, coming up with ideas that we will inject into the social discourse in that country, in the hope that by the time Mr. Biya leaves, and we hope it's in another year or two, we will have the ideas we need to build our economy and to build our country. And I'll tell you where we're starting. We've come to the conclusion, my little group, and we're going to propose this to the nation, to citizens. We've come to the conclusion that the first thing you want to focus on as a government is health. The health sector. And that everything you do should depart from health. and reinforce the health of citizens. Health. Your economy should be a health-oriented economy. Your tourism, everything you do should be health-oriented. Your agriculture, think about this. If the wealth you generated in the agricultural sector had at the base of it the preservation and the promotion of the health of citizens, they'll eat well. Children will be born knowing that they can worry about everything, but not about their health. Once your health is guaranteed, you become dynamic, strong, forward-looking, because you don't have, even this country, America doesn't have that. This country doesn't have that. So you'd even be different. Health as the basis of all government action. Maybe you want to start thinking about that. Think about all the things you can do in all the sectors of the economy, in all areas of wealth creation, if you departed from the fact that every Ugandan will be guaranteed health from the day they are born. Think about that. And then as you go from there, in our countries, we were told, you're born, you're trained, you work, and then you retire. The group I'm working with, we've decided we're going to tell citizens, no more retirement. We will retire the word retirement. Why? Because we've agreed amongst ourselves that when a child is born, education starts in the family. The first 6 years, 7 years, in the family. So we have to organize our societies in ways that allow families to train the children who are born. What are the ideas that we generate? What do we tell them to do to support those children in their early years? And then beyond that, it's formal education, primary, secondary, post-secondary schools. And then beyond that, it's the professional training, and you're moving into the professions. So the state is constantly organized in a way that will support this child who's been born, this individual. You're born, you're trained in the family, you're trained in schools, you're trained in the institutions, you get into professional life, and then think about this. By the time you are out of professional life and you're being told you must go on retirement, that's when you are the most enriched individual, the most enriched citizen, because of all the education and experiences that you now combine. So at 60 is when you should be, I'm not saying that because I'm 60 and beyond, but at 60 is when you can give the most to your country. So your country should organize itself to tap into that energy instead of throwing you out to go on retirement. Think about that. I know that the people who clap for me were those who are 60 or in that neighborhood. But this is the truth. We've got to think differently. That's the challenge of Africa today. We've got to think differently. I worked for the World Bank for 20 years. I worked for the African Development Bank in senior positions for 5. And I worked in my country. And I came to realize that the ideas that they ship to us are not the ideas that we need necessarily. They'll never tell you, Uganda got suspended the other day by the World Bank. I know a lot of people were happy about it. I was, but for a different set of reasons. I was, because you don't need aid. Uganda does not need aid.
Tukyali n'abakulembeze abava mu Africa balabye ku nsi eno abakadde baffe.
Health-oriented economy. Your tourism, everything you do should be health-oriented. Your agriculture, think about this. If the wealth you generated in the agricultural sector had at the base of it the preservation and the promotion of the health of citizens, they'll eat well. Children will be born knowing that they can worry about everything, but not about their health. Once your health is guaranteed, you become dynamic, strong, forward-looking, because you don't have, even this country, America doesn't have that. This country doesn't have that. So you'd even be different. Health as the basis of all government action. Maybe you want to start thinking about that. Think about all the things you can do in all the sectors of the economy, in all areas of wealth creation, if you depart it from the fact that every Ugandan will be guaranteed health from the day they are born. Think about that. And then as you go from there, in our countries, we were told, you're born, you're trained, you work, and then you retire. The group I'm working with, we've decided we're going to tell citizens, no more retirement. We will retire the word retirement. Why? Because we've agreed amongst ourselves that when a child is born, education starts in the family. The first 6 years, 7 years, in the family. So we have to organize our societies in ways that allow families to train the children who are born. What are the ideas that we generate? What do we tell them to do to support those children in their early years? And then beyond that, it's formal education, primary, secondary, post-secondary schools. And then beyond that, it's the professional training, and you're moving into the professions. So the state is constantly organized in a way that will support this child who's been born, this individual. You're born, you're trained in the family, you're trained in schools, you're trained in the institutions, you get into professional life, and then think about this. By the time you are out of professional life and you're being told you must go on retirement, that's when you are the most enriched individual, the most enriched citizen, because of all the education and experiences that you now combine. So at 60 is when you should be, I'm not saying that because I'm 60 and beyond, but at 60 is when you can give the most to your country. So your country should organize itself to tap into that energy instead of throwing you out to go on retirement. Think about that. I know that the people who clap for me were those who are 60 or in that neighborhood. But this is the truth. We've got to think differently. That's the challenge of Africa today. We've got to think differently. I worked for the World Bank for 20 years. I worked for the African Development Bank in senior positions for 5. And I worked in my country. And I came to realize that the ideas that they ship to us are not the ideas that we need necessarily. They'll never tell you, Uganda got suspended the other day by the World Bank. I know a lot of people were happy about it. I was, but for a different set of reasons. I was because you don't need aid. Uganda does not need aid. If like I tell even my own country, Cameroon, we don't need aid. There's enough wealth in the land to generate and take care of everything we need. Our infrastructure building, the innovations we need, buying the technologies that we need, providing the hospitals and the schools and so on. There is enough money in the land to get all of that if we organized ourselves. So, Mr. Bobi Wine and the supporters of this young man, for whom I have so much respect, please help him be different. Help him be different. It's not your emotional charge that's going to make him different. No. It's your ability to take a step back and say, look, if we're going to be different, we have to come up with different set of ideas. We've got to think differently about who we are. We've got to think differently about that child who's just been born, about the citizen that that child will become. You've got to think differently about that. And if you do, you may help that child become the citizen of a state that provides leadership to Africa. Uganda has the ability to do that, you know. Uganda can do that. You're the pearl of Africa, aren't you? So, ladies and gentlemen, I know I don't, I shouldn't be, maybe we should engage in some range of questions. Which, I was going to give a formal presentation, but I don't like doing that. I prefer speaking from the heart, because I believe that what comes from the heart goes into the heart. So, I'll take any question. But if you like for me to just continue talking, I will. I'm a talker. I was a journalist, you know. Like Remy Bahati, who's a journalist. He's in the room. Yes, sir.
So you're on camera.
Thank you. As a matter of fact, you've just said what I said, but put it in a different context of language. What I said essentially is, free your minds. Told you I worked for development institutions, the most important development institutions on the continent, World Bank, African Development Bank, and the rest of them. And I realized that what they were pushing in Africa should not be, we don't need to, there was something they called structural adjustment. That destroyed the continent, destroyed our economies. So clearly they're not giving us anything we should be adopting. We should free our minds, think about what God gave us, and I mentioned that, and see how we can transform what God gave us into wealth that we distribute fairly, starting with health. That's my story. I'm so happy when somebody claps because it tells me you understood what I'm saying. Can you guys just... I'm kidding, if you clap for me or you don't, it makes no difference to me. Believe me, I'll finish here and walk out of here. But I want you to understand what I'm saying. I really want you to understand what I'm saying because for a number of reasons. One, I am here because I believe Uganda can and should be different. I'm here because I want Bobi Wine, who continues to fascinate me, to succeed in what he's trying to do. I'm here not for ideology. I'm here to say that we can think differently. We can free our minds. We can, again, go back to the drawing board, go back to the basics, look at what we have and say, what can we do with what we have? As a matter of fact, when you go to heaven, God is going to ask you, what did you do with what I gave you? That's the question. So let's look at what we have and say, what do we do with what we have? What do we have in Uganda? And how do we use that to make our lives better? Because the whole point is about improving on the quality of life of citizens. So yeah, let's go back to the Nkrumahs and the rest. They brought us independence. They may have made their mistakes with regard to ideology because of the pressures that they were receiving. But we don't even need that. We don't need that. Let's step back and do what we need to do. That's Bobi Wine. Can somebody take a picture? Who come and take a picture of me and Bobi Wine? I mean, I need to. Are you the Bobi Wine?
Oh, yes, I am, sir.
You're such a young man.
Thank you.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You have all of my support and encouragement. You will make it. Somebody is there. Yeah, she's a chance. Okay. Welcome, Bobi Wine. I'm even more encouraged because he's a very young man. He looks a little, I thought he was a little older than he actually looks, I'm really encouraged. My brother Bobi, my young brother, I've said a lot of things that will be reported to you. And I hope somebody does. And if they don't do it properly, he will tell you how to get to me. I'll work with you, and we'll get Africa to work with you. All right. There's a place for these emotional outbursts. If we are Africans, we need to have that. But at the end of it, let's take a step back and think, Let's use our heads to see where we make a difference. It's important. Anyway, they'll report to you. So he's coming. Maybe I should take one or two more questions. I really should not be standing here when Bobi Wine is in the room, but I'll take one or two questions. Yeah, yes, sir.
How do you suggest that somebody like the Honorable Bobi Wine starts creating wealth, considering that he doesn't even collect taxes in a country and a situation whereby even trying to find membership or distributing pads to school-age children will bring the police, people are tear gas, people are shot at. So how do we marry the realities of what Africa is and then also be practical in bringing our people up to speed to the 21st century?
Thank you very much. It's a very good question. And I'll answer that, but before I do, I want to tell you that, Bobby, I'm from Cameroon. So I've lived the same difficulties under a leadership that has been there for the last 4 decades. And the head of the opposition in Cameroon, he just died not too long ago, Mr. Frundi, you might have heard of him, Nijon Frundi. He passed away not too long, last month. And we're from the same family. As a matter of fact, when I was born, Frundi was living with my parents. And his slogan was, power to the people. To this day, everybody when they think about the opposition in Cameroon and they think about what was achieved, the name, they'll tell you, meet any Cameroonian and find out, they'll tell you, it's Nijon Frundi, who's a cousin of mine. And I had occasion to talk to him one-on-one a lot of times. And after my sister was reminding me today, during his eulogy, they said he fought for 30 years and left the country worse than when he started, and which is true. Cameroon is far worse today than the 30 years ago when Frundi moved that country. And of course, if you asked him, he'll tell you. And when he was here before he went, a few months before he passed away, and I was with him in Atlanta, and he'll tell you. He said, well, they have the power. They have the army, they have the treasury. These were his words to me. They have the military, they have the treasury, they have the international relations, they can get loans from the IMF and the World Bank and so on. This was friendly, and I had nothing. And I told him, the only reaction I could have was this. I said, but you moved the country. Everywhere you went, thousands came out to see you. What do you think moved them? Was this the money you had? Did you give them money to come out? When the president, Mr. Biya, goes out, they give money to people. Did you give citizens money to come out and see you? He said, no. I said, it was the power of your ideas. That's what moved them. It was the power of your ideas. That's what moved them. And what we've been talking about today is the power of ideas. Challenge, let Ugandan citizens know that you have ideas that would be different from anything Mr. Museveni has to offer them, different from the money and the military and the coercion and what have you. You have the ideas. That's what we've been talking about health, about wealth creation, about agriculture, about transformation, about technology. It's these things. Put them together. Bobi Wine doesn't need to go out of his house to be arrested again. put those ideas and let Ugandans choose. They will have the choice either to stay in their current state of deprivation and poverty and illness and you name it, or we will do it differently. And this is what we stand for.
Yes, good morning, sir. My name is Robert Abuya Boston. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. Can't we adapt Obamacare to Chagulanyi Care?
Yes, of course you can. That will be my last answer. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Abakulu mubawulidde ebigambo byabwe mubiwulidde bibadde bisufu bibadde biwomu. Omulamu oguliwo gwakulaba nga Uganda Africa efuna abakulembeze abaagala Africa, abakulembeze abaagala ensi yaabwe, abakulembeze abeenyumiriza mu ggwanga lyabwe, abakulembeze abaagala okukulaakulanya Africa so si abakulembeze abeeyagaliza ebyabwe nga tebafa ku bantu be bakulembera. Kati nno bano bagamba nti Kyagulanyi ekkubo, Kyagulanyi Africa yonna erina okumuwagira okulaba nga Uganda etereera. Nti kuba mwami Museveni ye nattabula ekajiko nattabula yaleesewo entalo zemulaba mu Africa bwe bagamba yaleesewo obutabanguko bwemulaba mu Africa olw'okuba nga alemedde mu ntebe. Era ati nno nga balina okwegatta bana Africa okufuna eddembe mu Africa bajjewo mwami Museveni awummule akole emirimu gye ate bafuna omukulembeze omulala lwa Africa egende mu maaso. Kale bino bibadde mu lukuŋŋaana lwa NUP olwa NUP Convention 2023 Washington DC era obubaka bubadde bwakuwa bannayuganda kubazza mu maanyi nakuba ku magezi kye kirina okukolebwako n'okukwasaganya Africa yonna yegattire wamu okulaba nga Africa enunulwa. Mbaagala nnyo mwenna abaddeko mwebale kubaako Mukama Katonda asaba bankuumire tujja kuba tuddamu mweraba.